Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Relationships have the power to wound us and the power to heal us. As a clinical psychologist, author, and professor at Northwestern University, I've devoted my life to studying intimate partnerships and family dynamics. On Reimagining Love, I'm here to translate complex clinical topics into tools and takeaways that you can use in your relationships today. If you're ready to develop relational self-awareness and create vibrant and loving relationships with the people who matter most to you, you've come to the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome back to Reimagining Love. What does the term midlife bring to mind for you? Unlike other life phases, such as adolescence and retirement, we tend to joke about or dismiss midlife. However, recent research indicates that a whole lot of us actually discover increased happiness in our 40s and 50s. So today, I'm introducing you to a wonderful guest who is going to dispel our collective midlife myths and help us lean into the wisdom, the vitality, and the learning available to us during what he calls the messy middle. And as you know from listening to the show, I really want all of us to be paying attention to both the possibilities and the challenges that accompany all of these times of transition in our lives. Plus, selfishly, I am very squarely in the middle of my own midlife. So you know I was excited to speak with today's fantastic guest, Chip Conley. At the ripe old age of 26, Chip Conley founded Joie de Vie Hospitality, which became the second largest boutique hotel brand in the U.S. A couple of decades later, he sold his company and became Airbnb's head of global hospitality and strategy, i.e., Chip became the in-house modern elder at Airbnb. The intergenerational mentorship element of this role inspired Chip to leverage his own midlife research and personal experiences and found the Modern Elder Academy, or MEA, in 2018. Today, MEA is the world's first modern wisdom school. There are 2 dedicated campuses, one in Baja, California, one in New Mexico, where more than 5,000 participants have learned to navigate transitions, cultivate purpose, and own their wisdom. In December 2024, I have the pleasure of leading a 5-day retreat at the beautiful Santa Fe Ranch location, Loving You Without Losing Me, a retreat for couples. You can attend with your partner or on your own, and we're going to spend 5 days together exploring how to heal the past, how to deepen connection, and how to create a relational vision for your future. It's going to be fantastic. Plus, as an attendee, you'll be guided through MEA's core curriculum, which is all about navigating transition, cultivating purpose, and owning your wisdom. So it's really like 2 retreats in one. In the episode, you'll hear more about that retreat, and there's also more information for you in the show notes. So Chip and I dive into all things midlife, the inspiration behind MEA, and his latest book, Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. Whether you are approaching midlife, in the midst of it, or if midlife is squarely in your rearview mirror, I know you're going to appreciate Chip's affectionate and curious approach to this often overlooked and undervalued life stage. You're going to come away with appreciation for how we claim our expertise and our experience while remaining forever students of life and of relationships. And I hope you can start to explore how to mark with intentionality and ritual and care all of the transitional moments in your life and in the lives of the people that you love. Enjoy. Chip, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh my gosh. I'm sort of both excited and nervous.
If there's going to be any therapy that happens, it's going to be you offering therapy to me because I am squarely in midlife and really eager to break it all down with you.
Yes. Look forward to
it. So before we get into your book and the Modern Elder Academy and all of the things midlife, I would love for us to start with the relational self-awareness question that I asked to all of the guests at the show. Are you ready for that?
I sure am.
Okay. So can you talk to us a little bit about a way that you are reimagining love in one of your important relationships these days?
So I'll give you a little bit of background. First of all, I'm gay, although I would have said in my early to mid 20s, I'm bisexual because I had dated a lot of women back then, but I'm 63 now and pretty solidly on the Kinsey scale. I think I'm a 5 or a 6, pretty clearly. So I was in a relationship with an Israeli man named Oren from 1989 to 2000. So from about age 28 to 40. And then we split for a variety of reasons. And for the next 15 to 16 years, after having lived in San Francisco with him, he moved to LA and then he moved to Tel Aviv. And we both got into other relationships. And then, lo and behold, in 2015, when I threw my 55th birthday party, Oren helped with that. And then I bought a home in Baja in Mexico on the beach. And Oren helped design that because Oren used to be the head of design for my boutique hotel company. But I never really imagined I would get back together with Oren for a lot of reasons. I sort of had in my head, love was defined by an ideal partner. And I had seriously, this is a true story, an Excel spreadsheet of the qualities that I was looking for in my partner and then all the different guys I was dating. I went to Stanford Business School.
Well, yeah, you're an analyst. You're just breaking it down. Uh-huh.
This is what you do. And then one day after Oren had helped co-design this home with me on the beach, which ultimately became our Modern Elder Academy campus, our MEA campus. It was the core of it, and then we built all around it. Oren asked me the question, Chip, we were both single at this time, it's 2016. Chip, don't you want to find someone to grow old with? And then I said, no, I'm looking for someone to grow young with, which is sort of weird considering this is before I started the MEA. And then he said back to me, aren't you just looking for someone to grow with? I was like, oh my God, that's a great response. It's not about old or young, it's just growing. And I really came to realize that my shift in my thinking around love had to shift to, I'm not looking for the ideal partner. I'm looking for someone I can co-create the ideal conditions of my life with. And that shift changed everything. I threw away the spreadsheet. And when I thought through the possibility of like, what do I want my life to look like? And who could I co-create that with? There was nobody. And I'd had lots of serious romances, but there was nobody like Oren. Oren was the person who I knew I could co-create just a beautiful life with. And yes, for both of us, for me to him and for him to me, we don't fit the perfect partner for a variety of reasons. But the question of not so much, is he the perfect partner? Perfect's a terrible word, but the ideal partner moved to this idea of, no, it's not about his qualities or my qualities. It's about our qualities and what we have in terms of a commonality of how we want to curate our lives. And when I thought of it that way, it completely changed. And all of a sudden I looked at him with a completely different pair of glasses. And next thing I knew, we were back together. And that was 8 years ago.
I mean, come on. It is just, what a beautiful story. Now I want you and Oren on together.
Okay. Oh, he is. So I'm a bit of an extrovert. He's a bit of.
Is he? It would take some cajoling.
Yeah, he's a bit of an introvert. So he's, yeah.
Might have to figure out what his favorite sweet treats are and woo him with treats. Oh my gosh, Chip, I mean, the shift in you from the Excel spreadsheet with all the qualities that you thought you needed in a partner to what can we co-create here is the entire thesis of the Reimagining Love podcast. Like that is.
Okay. I guess we're done with the podcast.
So yeah, I feel like, what are we going to do with the rest of the hour?
Let's also acknowledge that I had a dating coach who is also meant to be a matchmaker. And she asked me some great questions. But at the end of the day, maybe she did marinate me. Maybe she did prepare me in my mental an emotional and even spiritual mindset around this. But she's not the one who actually sort of took me to this exact place. As is often the case, she was very focused on the kinds of tangible qualities that my partner would be showing up with. And it's that third piece. I have qualities, you have qualities, and then we have qualities together, and maybe even a fourth piece. There's a chemistry when you're together. So that's the third piece. But then the fourth piece is the aspiration of the life you want to create. That's really an important one. I was dating, so I was a founding board member of Burning Man, which is really, this arts collective, spiritual, crazy place. So when I was single, I met a Spanish guy who I really liked, and we really connected well in many levels. And in some ways, he was like that ideal partner. But he lived in Shanghai. He was an artist and a creative. He was a designer, artist, and his mom had moved from Spain to live with him in Shanghai. And he was pretty well established and having a successful life there. And so, I mean, in many ways, it was like,
That is
okay,
not ideal.
well, ideal partner maybe, but definitely not ideal,
Uh-huh.
not ideal conditions. I don't want to live in.
It's geographically undesirable.
And both of us, in our own headstrong ways, were like, you know what? I was living in Mexico. He was living there in China. It's like neither one of us really wanted to live elsewhere. So, long story short, is the fact that my romantic relationship, first of all, it has roots. It goes back to, so we were together. He's 2.5 years younger than me, but I was together with him from 28 to 40. And then I've been together with him from, what is now 56 till, I turn 64 later this year. So we've seen each other grow up. And there's also a sense like we had our opportunity for those 15, 16 years to just go out and sow our wild oats and go out and try other things. And there's a word that I hated when I was younger, and that's to settle. Because if you settle, it means you're compromising. If you settle, you're boring. If you settle,
Yeah, you've compromised yourself somehow. Mm-hmm.
But as we get older, there's a content. When you move from the pursuit of happiness to the comfort of contentment, and that contentment and that settling in with someone.
Well, and for you, the growth is in the settling. The growth is in the contentment.
That is true. Well, and I need that more than Oren does because I tend to be a bit of a whirling dervish. So to actually have a home life that is very tranquil and not agitated, I didn't marry my mirror. It's very comforting.
Yeah. There's something also so literal about partnering with the man who created your home. I mean, it was a co-creation, but like as you made that shift from who's my ideal partner to what is the ideal person with whom I can create growth, you co-created a home and then a relationship is beautiful. I think there is, I don't know for you, I know I've heard many midlife stories over the years of couples who have parted ways, high school, college, early 20s, later 20s for the two of you, and then kind of refound each other at midlife. And I think there's something quite powerful about the refinding and having had this chapter apart. And then I call it, when I talk about it, the power of refinding. And in the power of refinding, each of you were to each other simultaneously familiar and new, kind of at that intersection of novelty and familiarity.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Get on Facebook, go find your college, whatever.
It's not the only way to do it, that's for sure. But, for those who think like, okay, well, I did have a spark with that person back when I was younger, but I would never want to date them anymore. You're imagining that they haven't evolved. And if they said the same thing about you, they might also wonder like, okay, well, she or he is just way too X, Y, or Z. The reality is we all mature and evolve. But there's also it's nice to have roots. It's nice to have the roots of like, okay, we know each other and we've seen each other. But it's also beautiful to meet somebody later in life who comes out of left field. And it feels like this person just showed up in my life because I deserve this and because I have matured to the point where this is the world I'm supposed to be in. And I'm not wedded to the past.
Okay, so let's get into midlife. Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. So can we start by making sure that we're all kind of collectively on the same page? You argue that midlife is less an age and more of a feeling, but tell us a little bit about how you've broken down the 3 stages of midlife and what's happening to us as we move through them.
A backstory for me is that in my late 40s, really struggled. And everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I got to the other side of it after an NDE, a near-death experience where, an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. But that NDE at age 47 just said like, okay, I got to change my life. And I pretty much changed everything, got to age 50, and then things got better. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And my 50s were spectacular. So long story short is I was really provoked by midlife. I was sort of like curious and scared by it. And I lost 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52 between 2008 and 2010. And on a personal level, I was really intrigued by the topic of midlife. And then I get into my 50s where after having sold a boutique hotel company I'd started, I was asked by the founders of Airbnb to come in and be what they called the modern elder, which is like, I don't, I'm not grandpa. I'm 52
Right.
years old. What are you talking about?
Watch your language,
Yeah.
youngin'.
But then they said, Chip, you're twice the age of the average person here at 52. But a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. And it's not about reverence, it's about relevance. And I was like, oh, okay, I like all that language. And so I started to do some deep research on midlife because it's a life stage. There's 3 life stages that sort of emerged in the 20th century. Adolescence as a word didn't exist till 1904. Retirement, which sort of became big time in the 30s and beyond. And then midlife, which really sort of became well known in the 1960s with the term midlife crisis. The first 2 life stages, adolescence and retirement, have gotten a lot of love. And midlife has gotten just a bunch of jokes. And it's the butt of, late night jokes. So I really wanted to understand it with a sense of affection for this life stage. What if midlife is not a crisis, but it's a chrysalis? It's this mid stage between caterpillar and butterfly that is a bit dark and gooey, but it's also where the transformation happens. And as I started to do my research and see that, the U curve of happiness, that's an interesting thing. People bottom out around 45 to 50. And then after age 50, get happier with each decade. Becca Levy's work at Yale was really interesting to me, where she showed in her research that when people shift their mindset on aging, they moving from a negative to a positive, they gain 7.5 additional years. And Harvard's Ellen Langer's work also was interesting to me. So there was a lot out there, but it just hadn't been put together in a mainstream way, because bottom line is Hallmark cards we should have a class action lawsuit against that kind of company, because starting at age 40, all of the cards for your birthday are going to be awful because they're going to make fun of aging.
Right.
So as I did my research and created MEA, the world's first midlife wisdom school, and had 5,000 people from 50 countries now come through our program, I had the raw material from my own personal life, from 5,000 people who'd gone through the program, and then through social science to say, I'm ready to write this book. And you asked the question about the 3 stages of midlife. As I did more research on it, I heard some people, not the majority of people, but some people, some sociologists say that midlife lasts 40 years, from 35 to 75. Let me explain that for a minute. That if adulthood lasts from 18 on, they said, there's early adulthood, there's middle of adulthood, which we call midlife, and then there's later adulthood. So as we're living longer, people living into their 90s and 100s, it is possible that midlife starts around 35 and then it ends around 75. And if that is true, what it means, and I agree, it's more of a stage than an age. It's a time, as is true for anything in the middle, when you are imagining what adulthood is really about. And 35 as an adult is different than 75 as an adult, but it's a liminal period that whole time, but we don't tend to think of it that way. And long story short is, 35 to 50 is early midlife, 50 to 60 is the core of midlife. Although, again, you would never have said that 50 years ago. 50 to 60 would not have been the core of midlife because people were dying in their 60s. And then 60 to 75 is later midlife. And there's a flavor for each of those midlives. 35 to 50 is frankly can be a very challenging time. It's when you have this spinning plates phenomena. You are often in sandwich generation, taking care of aging parents, taking care of younger children, potentially if you have kids. It's where you come face to face with disappointment in your life because you're starting to see like, okay, I'm not going to be president of the United States, or I didn't marry my soulmate or whatever. It's, Brene Brown calls it the midlife unraveling. It's where you unravel your expectations in life and maybe your obligations. And it's the time where you just sort of like hit your bottom, frankly, in terms of adult life satisfaction. And then 50 to 60 is when you start to get comfortable in your own skin, just as it starts to sag. You start to realize you're not here on this earth to satisfy your parents, not here to keep up with the Joneses. You're not here to care a lot about people who, aren't thinking about you a lot, but you're worried about what they think of you. And you start to chart your own course in all kinds of ways. Now, these are averages, these are generalizations. And then 60 to 75 is when you're starting to be in the harvest period of your life. And Eric Erickson's, interesting 5 words of "I am what survives me" becomes very relevant to that
legacy.
that legacy period of, and so
You lay it out so beautifully, and it's, as is with any stage model, there are so many factors that intersect with it. I was thinking about how I was just spent some time with my very dear girlfriends who are from elementary school. And one of us, we've got kids at different ages, but one of the women, we're all the same age. We're all the same grade in school. Whereas I have 2 college students. She has a first grader. And so she said, am I 50 or am I the mother of a first grader? And there's these ways in which, depending on what's happening in our family system or our work, I think for me, and this so often happens, perhaps with heterosexual couples who've followed a more gender traditional outline. Whereas I'm watching my husband start to look at taking his foot off the accelerator. There's a way in which, now that we're empty nesters, I'm like, okay, like, let's freaking go. Like, what do I want to build? And so these interesting kind of asynchronies that have to do with those family life cycle and career inflection points.
But what we're really missing, Alexandra, was we're missing rituals. We have rituals when we're adolescents. There's all kinds of them: graduation from high school, commencement ceremonies, puberty, and your first kiss, and all these things. Some of them are ritualized, some of them are just sort of firsts of your life. And then in midlife, we almost act as if we're not supposed to have transitions, but we have everything from, menopause to parents passing away to changing jobs, divorce, health diagnoses, empty nest. So I just think, for example, for empty nest, we should have a ritual around empty nest. When people are empty nesters for the first time, because what happens is the kids come back.
That's right. We had that experience. Like, once I finally felt like my nervous system was like adapting, everyone's home, which is so wonderful. But yeah, right. Okay.
So, but to celebrate emptiness the first time it happens, you're not the only one. You have friends and, people in your neighborhood and etc. Throw an empty nest party. It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay, we did Empty Nest Fest. I went on Amazon. There are party favors for empty nest parties. I wanted to take the theme. I wanted to explore the theme of bittersweet. So I wanted to serve sweet and sour meatballs and dark chocolate. And my husband was like, okay, Al, like, just get some wine and some hummus. And let's just not go that deep.
Oh my God. No, listen, I am so glad you're going to be teaching with us at MBA because we need more ritual in our life. Because what ritual helps us to do, and of course a wedding is that form of it. And we tend to create rituals when someone's going through a time of their life in which they have to, number one, mark it. There's the past and now there's the future. And they need community support because it's a significant change or transition in one's life. And unfortunately, we just, between, baby shower and funeral, there's just not a lot.
I think that just even that bit people can take into their lives. And I think that maybe the question is, how might I ritualize this? So step 1 is just noticing if I'm in a transition of any kind, no matter how big or small, maybe especially the small that might get missed or looked over. How might I create ritual around this? And it doesn't have to look any particular way. But the point is, you're saying you're marking it and it is an invitation for community support.
At the MEA website, on the bottom footer, there is a free resource called The Anatomy of a Transition. What we've tried to do is to help to document, what Joseph Campbell and Arnold van Gennep and William Bridges and Angeles Arian and all these wonderful people Bruce Feiler have written. They've all said the same thing, which is there are 3 stages to a transition. There's caterpillar, there's chrysalis, there's butterfly. And caterpillar is, there's ending, messy middle, and beginning. Ritual is helpful because it helps you to move from ending to messy middle. And messy middle, it doesn't have to be negative, but it is a liminal period. It's when you're sort of in transition. And so being able to mark something is not only good for being able to say it's the end of something and I have social support, but it's also helpful to say, I am now moving into this messy middle stage. And once you know that, and then you know what to do in the messy middle, which is like, social support and trying to find the through line. What's the theme? What are you supposed to learn from this experience? That takes you then to the final stage, the third stage, which is the beginning of something new. And what you need in that stage is a growth mindset. You need to be willing to improve and begin and learn and be open to being a beginner. Because if you're not doing that, then you're going to just be like the caterpillar who comes out of the chrysalis and then looks around and says, I'm going back in there. And sometimes people do that. And sometimes, let's use love as an example. We don't throw divorce parties very often. So, the ending of something when it comes to a divorce is just, legal documents. But there's not a ritual, and there ought to be. And then there's this messy middle period. And the messy middle period, maybe you just getting sorted through of like who you are and what you like and you're not really ready to date yet, but maybe you're testing a little bit of online dating and you get through that period to the point where you're ready. And now you're in the beginning, and maybe the beginning is literally meeting that man or woman or, in your life. And you have to be willing to be an idiot and, and look stupid and have a sense of humor around yourself. Because if you are trying to be perfect, if you have a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, you're trying to prove yourself, you're trying to win, you're self-conscious, and it's going to be really a struggle. And you may want to go back into the liminal messy middle because you just want to retreat from dating.
Do you think that as we get older, it's even harder for us to tolerate being a newbie when we say, I'm too old for that? Or like, is that a defense against the vulnerability of not knowing that is maybe even harder with age?
Yeah, one of the things we do at MEA is really early on is we help people to see, come face to face with their tolerance or aptitude or adeptness of change in their life. Are they more adept, less adept, more open, less open? And about half the people in one of our workshops have the point of view of like, I'm more open. And I'm more open for the following reasons. And it usually has to do with, I know that this won't kill me. I've gotten through worse things before. I am more confident in myself. I have evidence of how I have coped through other transitions, etc. I'm less self-conscious. On the other hand, there's a lot of people, at least half the people saying, I am worse at this as I get older because I am more risk averse. I have more obligations in my life and to other people and things. And I have an identity that I have to sort of like maintain. And frankly, I'm just comfortable. I mean, comfort can breed apathy and breed a lack of tolerance for newness. And so long story short is, learning how, there's times when a fixed mindset's going to serve you because for safety, security reasons, or you just want to be, I want blinders on. And that's okay. I don't want to say it's always bad. It's not. But often a growth mindset gives you more options. And for those people who feel stuck or they feel bored or they are, feeling, I don't know, like they need to shake things up, then this is what you need to do.
This is what you refer to as TQ, right? Like transition IQ.
Transitional intelligence.
Transitional
Exactly.
intelligence.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to the idea of ritual one more time because just because you've sat with so many modern elders and you have so many midlife stories inside of your head. So are there other, we talked about how one might ritualize a divorce, how one might or the fact that one might ritualize a divorce, one might ritualize an empty nest. Have you heard stories, or are there other ones where you might want to invite our awareness to, like, hey, this is a pretty common one that we've seen really beautiful things happen when this gets ritualized?
Menopause. Yes.
Menopause.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Menopause is having its moment, and a moment that will last. And yeah, I think menopause is a great one. I think, what's interesting about retirement's a weird word today. I mean, retirement had its heyday really in the 20th century. And the heyday was, especially in later 20th century, the retirement age was declining. You have your pension, you get your gold watch, etc. And you move to Sun City, and the rest of your life is, sort of based upon being in Sun City. We in our generation and our age are not so motivated by that. And instead of having one or two or three employers in the course of our life, we have 13 employers. And it's a much more opaque idea of what a retirement is, because it's not like on Friday you're working 100%, and on Monday it's 0%. So long story short is that's a tough one in terms of how do you ritualize it, because, how do you do a line in the sand on that one? Let me give you another one though. There's a woman named Mariana. She came to MEA the very first week we were open 6.5 years ago. She had a design firm, a graphic design firm and branding firm, and she was really good at this. And because she was good, she kept adding employees and her company kept growing. And then it was like, a roller coaster. In good times, she had a lot of business. In recessionary times, she didn't have enough business, and she sort of hated being an employer, but she loved doing the work. Long story short is she had 5 years of knowing she wanted to just shut this business down and just do the work with, an assistant and not have a whole team. But she couldn't find the way and the courage to actually do that. So she came to MEA, had her experience, and like, oh my God, I now understand transitions. I am going to invite all of my current employees, former employees, current clients, former clients, friends and family to a cemetery. And we are going to have a wake for my company, because I am going to shut it down over the next 6 months. And I just want everybody to come and celebrate with me what the last 15 years have been like with this company, because there's a lot of good times. So that was not retirement for her, but that was the process of her having to have a ritual to make sure that we're all on the same page. This is where we're going, or this is where I'm going with my business, but it had some relevance to other people too. So that's another example of how a ritual helped give someone the courage and support to forge forward with something that they, for 5 years, were having a hard time doing.
Right. And to really honor it as a completion of a chapter, that the chapter was complete. The thing was built, the thing did what it needed to do, and it got to be closed in a way that she chose rather than,
Yeah.
Okay, I for sure want to talk about midlife bodies. The design of your book, which I love, is there's a whole section on the physical elements of midlife and the emotional elements and the mental elements and the vocational elements and the spiritual elements. So you spend time kind of inviting us into these different domains that all live within us. And I would say play out in the space between us and the people in our lives. And so I want to talk about the physicality of midlife. You argue that the gift of midlife is the understanding that our bodies no longer define us. So say a little bit more about what are best practice, like what do we tend to struggle with around these midlife bodies? And then what are some of the gateways to a bit more freedom?
The way our culture, and I'm speaking about US culture right now, the way our culture's been built is the idea that you grow when you're young, you age when you're old. And what I mean by that is, you say to Johnny, I haven't seen you in 2 years, and look at how much you've grown. You're talking about his height. But if you said that to a 55-year-old man or woman, you're talking about the waistline.
Right.
There's a perception that growing only happens when you're young. Aging happens when you're old, and aging has negative physical consequences. Let me start by saying the truth is we grow emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, culturally, relationally, our whole lives. So we're growing our whole lives. It's just that the physical side of aging has some negative consequences based upon a vision of beauty being youth. So that's the framework to think of. The relief is when you realize I have all these other qualities about me and I don't want to or don't need to, try to, for short-term vanity reasons, keep up my body. I should definitely keep up my body though, because for long-term maintenance reasons, it's wise.
You have a section header that's called The Price of a Six Pack.
The price of a six pack, yes.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That was
So
clever.
six packs being your abs, and women in particular love men with six packs. But the reality is, when you're 30, the cost of a six pack is not very high. And when you're 60, the cost of a six pack is a lot more expensive, meaning more time, more effort, just because that's what happens with our bodies.
More sacrifice, right? More sacrifice of pleasure.
More sacrifice, more time invested, really. That's to me the expense, is the amount of time necessary. The truth is this, is that our body is a rental vehicle that we were issued at birth. And our job is to maintain that rental vehicle as it has more mileage on it. But over time, what matters most is not what it looks like on the outside, but how does it feel like on the inside? To me, that's important. Now, I say that as a man, and I know that in a culture for women, this is really hard, because a bunch of research shows, and our MEA surveys show, that the number one thing that men feel in their 50s that doesn't feel good is irrelevance, and women feel invisibility. Now, there can be an upside to invisibility. What is the upside? The upside is that you are no longer getting attention purely for physical reasons. But the downside is you sort of feel, no one wants to feel invisible. That means that you don't exist. And so what I would just say is the people I most admire are those who can look at their evolution of their physical structure and see that I want to put effort into maintaining my health. If you're maintaining your health, I will tell you there are beauty and physical beauty, positive ramifications of that. But I don't want to get so obsessed of trying to stay youthful that I forget that what's most important as we get older is being useful. And what keeps us alive is not the Botox or the tummy tuck. What keeps us alive is not that the youthful, it's the useful. And learning how to be useful in an evolving kind of way. So therefore, it does mean not investing so much time and worry about how you look. And how you look. Think of Iris Apfel. She just passed away. You at 95 years old, you can be a fashionista. Nothing wrong with that. You can be more eccentric in how you dress as you get older. So sometimes maybe the beauty is less about the physical body. It's harder to maintain over time, but it's how you carry yourself, both the presence of who shows up. Happiness is the ultimate cosmetic, and what you're wearing.
I was just thinking about like kind of playfulness and humor. I know what's been so helpful to me is my fellow midlife women travelers. Like I think in my work, I'm with a lot of young women. A lot of my team is, a robust crew of 20 somethings and 30 somethings. And I love it, but I'm aware, I feel really aware of the generational difference between us. And I know how essential it is for me to have time with my midlife women where we can just be like cynical and just like laugh about it, right? Like just laugh about the truth of it I think that helps too, like the levity and the play. And so when you're talking about this fashionista, there's like a kind of playfulness that then helps us maybe take ourselves a bit less seriously.
I mean, I think as we get older, we learn how to become alchemists of ourselves, the polarities of ourselves, the masculine, the feminine, the introvert, the extrovert, the yin, the yang, the curiosity, the wisdom, the gravitas, the depth, and the levity, the humor, and the lightness. The people I most admire in the world are not just growing old, they're growing whole. They are learning how to be less compartmentalized and to be present with all of that within one person. So yes, with your friends, being able to have levity, but also know that, when something really serious is going on, you're there for that too. When we're young, it's harder. We are more polarized. And I'm not talking politically right now, or socially. I'm talking about just internally. We are more compartmentalized.
Yeah, what a beautiful idea of becoming whole, becoming ever more able to hold on to all of it. Okay, so we've mentioned, we've kind of talked around the Modern Elder Academy, and we've made reference to the fact that I am so excited to come and be one of your faculty members. So tell us, so why? What did you see that led you to create the Modern Elder Academy?
I saw that I was confused by the fact that my late 40s were terrible, my 50s were great. So, and then I lost 5 male friends to suicide, not great. I saw in my 50s at Airbnb, as the modern elder at Airbnb, that there were people who were a little bit younger than me who were doing everything they could to pretend they're 10 or 15 years younger, literally lying on their LinkedIn profiles so that people thought they were younger. And so I saw how age was such a, I mean, we have a whole anti-aging industrial complex, which basically is an anti-women complex because it's meant to sell products and services to women who are scared about their natural process of aging. So I wanted to okay, well, if Becca Levy has shown that a positive attitude, positive mindset on aging will gain you 7.5 years, I want to create a pro-aging product and service. And that's how MEA came about. And we call ourselves the world's first midlife wisdom school because guess what? The longer you've lived, the more raw material you have for being wise. Our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. And so, I wanted to create that. And, we started with building around my home in Baja where Oren and I were living, decided to, during COVID, find a location in the US as well. So we have 2 locations, and the US location is a 2,600 acre regenerative horse ranch just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
That's amazing. And so, I mean, people who are listening will go to the Modern Elder Academy website. We'll link it in the show notes. But you offer 5-day, right? Most of the retreats are 5-day.
5 days. We also have online programs. So there's online programs, but the workshops are 5 days. They're residential. So you're staying there. Someone once described it as 4 seasons meets the Esalen Institute, famous retreat center in Big Sur, California, meets Blue Zones, which is, we have a partnership with Dan Buettner and Blue Zones where we teach Blue Zones workshops. So Blue Zones is about longevity. So luxury meets personal growth meets longevity. And that's really what it's about. And the average workshop has around 20 to 25 people in it from all over. It's about 63% women. So women tend to gravitate toward it more. Average age is 54. We've had people as young as 25 and as old as 88, which is sort of surprising. And 1/6 of the people who come are millennials, which is surprising given the name, Modern Elder Academy. The name is just a vestige from my experience at Airbnb. But let's acknowledge that, frankly, all the words we use for aging are tough. Aging's tough, midlife's tough, elder is tough, senior is tough. We've not really landed on great language for addressing the most fundamental commonality we all have in life.
I love, though, that you're reclaiming and reimagining the word elder. I remember, I think I was probably in maybe my young 40s, the first time somebody referred to me as a wise woman. And I remember how it felt in my body. I just was like, wait a minute. No, I reject that. I resist that. And now I cherish it when someone refers to me as a wise woman. I really have started to integrate that and celebrate.
The more we celebrate it and integrate it and believe it and embody it, the more we are rebelling back against a culture that wants to say ageism is okay.
Yes.
Let's protest that. Let's protest that, not necessarily with placards on the street, but just in how we don't believe in that.
Yeah, there's a way in which I know as a woman who is 50, it is the intersection of ageism and sexism for me. And you were talking before about invisibility. And so it's like when I buy into, I feel all of my internalized ageism, that then means that I'm going to collude with invisibility. I'm going to get quieter because of that belief that I don't have the same beauty I had. I don't have the same relevance I had, even though at the same time, I feel like more than ever, people really ought to be listening to me. I've got a lot of stuff, figured out.
Women in their 50s their confidence in their careers is actually growing. This is averages, whereas for men, it's plateauing and maybe starting to decline. So there's a lot of interesting research from Harvard on this. Yeah, embrace it.
So you have guest faculty that come in on a range of topics. You were telling me before we started that you just had a week with Dick Schwartz. Mm-hmm. And so you'll be there in the late fall at our Santa Fe campus. You'll be focusing on love and couples and all the good stuff that you are world class around. And, you can be in your 30s and come, and you don't have to be, 54, the average age. You can be
older or younger than that. And you get a great dose, in person of your wisdom.
The focus of the workshop will be, it's called Loving You Without Losing Me. And so we're really going to be focusing on relational purpose and how to create a relationship vision that really does support the me, the you, and the us. And I think it's so neat that really when it's a retreat for couples, but we're also really welcoming because we know that not everybody can have both partners be there at the same time, that somebody could come without their partner and still, when you change one part of a system or you change the whole system. So I think that's the idea. But I love that people really get kind of like a 2-for-1 because I'll be teaching there over the course of the week. But then there's also the MEA faculty who's guiding them through all of this that you were speaking about before, the TQ and the longevity workshops and those pieces.
Navigating transitions, cultivating purpose, and owning wisdom are the 3 pillars of our program, with this overall wrapper of how do we feel better about our aging. So yeah, I think it's going to be a dynamite combination. Really excited to have you join us.
Well, Chip, I have so enjoyed this time with you. And I know this conversation is going to give people just so many like wonderful pearls of wisdom and good stuff to take away. So if people aren't familiar with you, aren't familiar with your work, aren't familiar with MEA, what is the best way for them to dive in and learn more?
You can go to meawisdom.com and you'll learn more about things there. I have a daily blog and you can go there and read my blog and subscribe to it for free. And then if you want to learn more about me personally and my books, chipconley.com is the best place to look.
That's great. And we're going to have links to the show notes to Chip's brand new book, Learning to Love Midlife. But this was not your first book. This is your
seventh
book. Amazing.
Yeah.
So links in the show notes. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chip Conley, for joining me on Reimagining Love. Midlife is well overdue for a rebrand, and MEA and Chip's latest book, Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age, provide just the inspiring and empowering approach that we all need and deserve. You can find out more about Chip, his many best-selling books, and the programs offered at the MEA retreat centers and online in the show notes. Until next time, be well. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.